All right, folks, welcome to what is going to be my last Torus Roadmap meeting. Next week is my last week, so 2 weeks from now, I will not be here to lead this meeting. So as we discussed last time, then my main goal from a roadmap perspective before I leave is to have a roadmap that goes all the way through the end of 2027. Not because I think that that's actually going to be what the roadmap ends up looking like all that far out, like a year and a half from now, but so that we have a nice long runway that can support this transition, and it makes it easier for whoever is next picking up this job of managing our roadmap. So last time we solicited some feedback from the group. We got some really good ideas. Actually, the roadmap we're going to show you incorporates almost all of the ideas. I don't think every single one, but almost all of the ideas that we talked about last time. So I will share it with you. I do want, so the purpose of this meeting is for me today is for me to go over the roadmap that Laura and Jess and I put together. We can solicit some feedback, from people once you see it. I do want to set the expectation that in my remaining, I guess, week and a half that I'm here, I actually have a bunch of stuff I'm trying to get through to make sure I'm leaving things in decent shape. So I am probably going to have a limited time to respond to criticism of this roadmap. If there's something that people are saying that is, kind of quick and non-controversial, sure. But I think more than having this be feedback, that I'm going to take action on right away, it's probably more that I'm going to, make sure I have something I'm going to be passing on to whoever is picking up running the roadmap. So please do feel free to give your feedback. Just understand that there might not be an immediate, reaction to that. And I will plan whatever state this roadmap is in. I am going to plan to share it out. If you were in the staff meeting earlier today, I did mention this. I want to make sure that people have a roadmap that they can look at. I think I'm probably just gonna ask Laura to post it on the website, a link to it, as we have done in the past with roadmap snapshots. Though of course this is a longer term thing, and that way people can kind of see what our plans are. And where we're thinking of going. All right, with that all said, I am going to share this roadmap Notion document. So what I'm going to do is, so the actual source of truth of what is the roadmap is in the roadmap project in Jira. And that's what I'm actually going to be showing you when I share my screen. But because not everyone has a login for Jira, I am going to be sharing, like we have put this, Laura was actually really instrumental in helping me put all the information from Jira into a Notion document that we've published. So I'm going to put the link for that Notion document in the chat here. And that is also what I'm probably going to post on the webpage because it's accessible to everyone. I also, in that document, there are links to the Jira roadmap, and I will also put that link in the chat as well, so that if you want to and have a Jira login, you can follow along with me in Jira as well. Before I get into this and share my screen and start talking about the roadmap, does anyone have questions or anything that we should talk about? Okay. So I'm going to start off by sharing this Notion roadmap. So I will put this in the chat. And then I'm also going to share the 2026 Jira roadmap. I'll put a link for that. Do I not? Oh, I do have this up here. And I will then share a link in Jira for the 2027 Jira roadmap, which is called the future roadmap in Jira. So then you guys will have all of the links. And now I'm going to start off with this 2026 one, and I'm going to share my screen. So if you are in JIRA and you're in the roadmap project, then you should see there's a bunch of stuff here that you don't necessarily need to care about. The current roadmap that has 2026 stuff on it is what's called the product roadmap here. I'm going to briefly talk about this. I'm going to spend a lot more time in this that's called the future roadmap. And both of those, you should be able to find information in the Notion document if you're looking at that instead. So we are currently working on Torus version 33. There's not really, I'm not really going to get deeply into where we are in 2026 because this is largely set. We can probably make some, adjustments, but a lot of this stuff is already being, obviously version 33, but we're more than halfway done with building it. In a little over a month, we're going to be switching over to version 34, which that work is well underway in terms of being designed and ready to go. And research is underway for version 35, which is our fourth quarter release. But the main thing I wanted to point out here is actually a quick adjustment that we made based on feedback from the last roadmap meeting. Just so you know, if you're looking at the epics here, then this light bulb is a major epic. That's usually something that we define as if the entire development team was to work, put in the effort of one full 2-week sprint, it would be about that amount of work. We also have this green minor epic, which is usually about like half that work or less. And then a new one that we added in here is what we're calling a micro epic, which is this blue check mark. And that is really like a way, like a one ticket story, like epic that it's just really quick, but we typically historically haven't really tracked these in the roadmap project. And I think we probably should have a better practice of saying, what are these little things that we're trying to kind of slip in here? And the one that we just added is called page options available from within the page. It is right now in version 35, just because we're almost done on work for version 34. And I think this is going to be a fairly simple one. It's assigned to Laura, but she's not sure if she is going to be able to get this into version 34. So we put it into version 35. But that was one thing where if you're in a page and you want to access the page options, you actually have to leave the page and then click on page options. And this is really just making sure there's a link on the page that says that takes you right to page options. Okay. If folks have questions or comments, you can interrupt me, but if you put something in the chat, I might have to rely on Louisa to tell me since I'm sharing my screen. All right, I'm now going to the future roadmap. So this is the 2027 roadmap. This is broken up into 4 releases, one for each quarter. We have version 36 through version 39. So I do want to point out that this quarterly release schedule at some point is going to be disrupted because I know that Darren wants to move to a continuous delivery mode as opposed to a quarterly release mode. So we're still doing this quarterly release roadmap, but there are ways, and we've kind of talked as a team about how the product team would adapt to that and adapt the roadmap if that were to happen. But the total amount of work that the team can do wouldn't change. So I don't know what just happened to my screen. So I think that the number and kind of ordering of these is likely to stay the same, but we'll adjust as necessary. I'm just going to reload my screen because I don't understand what just happened. I think it's related to this, actually, the big screen. And now I have this weird, like, green. So if you want to, you can stop sharing and begin sharing. Okay, I will stop sharing and begin sharing again. Okay, that made the weird green thing go away. Cool. Can everyone see this entire future roadmap with these 4 releases? Okay.
Yep, looks good.
Great. Okay, so we're going to start. And another thing I want to mention, I do see there's something in the chat. Oh, yes. Thank you, Jeff. And I mentioned this last time as well, but our considerations when we're making this aren't just what is the top priority. It's also looking at like what are the capabilities of the product team to research and design and prepare for this. We want to make sure that we're not putting too much work on Jess at any given time. So, that she's not going to be able to meet a deadline. So we're trying to have a balance where we're looking at what are the things that Jess is doing, what are things that Laura is doing, what are things that an intern can help with potentially, and also what are things that we've already done some work on, so that might take some of the pressure off Jess. So that is a big consideration here as well. Okay, so our first item in version 36 is instructor course customization. This is actually a continuation of the work that is starting in our very next release, which is version 34, which is instructor customization of assessments here. The main goal of this, and keeping in mind that version 34 is a mini release, it is just to get it so that instructors can remove embedded questions and pools from pages. That is, it might turn out that there's time to do more than that. But really, that's the main goal, to give that level of relief to instructors in version 34. So for instance, if there's something they weren't able to cover in a course, or something that's not relevant to their pedagogy, then they can actually remove that, as opposed to right now, they would have to just eliminate an entire assessment if it has questions in it that their students aren't going to be able to answer because it wasn't covered. So this is really our top priority. But going into our first quarter of version 36, we really want to look much more in depth at how our instructors going to be able to customize, to add and remove and make changes to course materials. If you either click into this in Jira, or you can expand some of the toggles in the Notion document, you should see more information about what are things that we're talking about instructors being able to do, how are we measuring success for this epic. But obviously, what this exactly looks like is going to depend a lot on what Jess turns up in research. But one of the reasons that we see here that Jess has 3 major epics assigned to her for this release, and normally that would be way too much. One of the reasons is she's already going to have started the research for version 34. So this isn't like a complete, new amount of work for her to do. She's going to be starting to turn that up in the research that she's already doing. Next, we have payments. This is looking at how our payments work, what are pain points, either for our students who are making payments or for our admins, or really anyone associated with paying for courses in Jira. So I do think there's going to be new research for this that happens, but also I don't think this is in the Notion document, but in Jira, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of this, I actually have notes from this meeting that happened in 2024, where we had done like a quick, see if anyone says that we don't actually ever circle back to things after we do the quick and dirty version. In 2024, we did a quick and dirty fix for some issues that we had with payments. And part of what we're looking at here is actually having a more scalable solution to some of the issues. So this is a meeting that I think Hal was in, I think Raphael was in. I don't remember, it was 2 years ago, so I don't remember anything else. But we've got a bunch of notes about what those are. But Jess will also be just taking a more holistic look at what's going on with payments and where the issues with that come in. All right. And next we have this overhaul of user preview functionality. Again, looking at what looks like a rather large load for Jess in this release. This actually isn't as much work because this had been planned, many of you know, for earlier releases, and we're finally, ideally going to be getting around to doing it. She will need to do some new research and design work just to make sure that everything in there is still relevant. I mean, we've made changes to interfaces and whatnot, since she initially did her work on this, but it won't be a completely new research effort for her. And the goal of this overhaul user preview is basically anytime you are a user in Torus who is looking at content as though you were another user, if you are an instructor looking at student content, if you're an author doing a preview, if you're admin, whatever it is, you're actually going to be seeing accurately what that user sees, whereas that's not always true in our current system. And finally, we have one that is assigned to Laura, though I do think that Jess is going to have to help with some of the interface stuff here and make sure it's consistent with our design system and whatnot. This is our LMS integration and gradebook epic. And if we go into the must-have functionality here, there's two things that I think people are going to be happy to see. One is progress as a scored item. And one is a pause in LMS sync. I think these are the two kind of biggest issues I've heard in terms of LMS integration and gradebook. We have a bunch of other things that have come in over triage over time and different individual issues that we want. So I have those all under optional, and it's going to depend on Jess's research, things like a full LMS sync feature, just more finite control, reports, that sort of thing, really other things related to how the gradebook works and how it integrates with LMSs. But these are really our two biggest guys. Does anyone have any questions or comments about any of these items before I move on? Okay. Moving into our second quarter of 2027, the first item I have here, which I think is pretty exciting, is we're currently working on in version 33, an instructor intelligent dashboard. This is looking at a student intelligent dashboard, and the idea behind this is we have discovered through research that students really don't use our homepage. We have this homepage that had been designed as part of our NG23 efforts. And by and large, students just bypass it. They don't find it to be useful. So this is really looking at what would be a useful central dashboard homepage for students that is going to give them accurate information about what they should be doing in the course, about where their best efforts are going to be, about what's coming up that they have to pay attention to, really helping them to navigate the course and understand what's going on. It's just giving an effort to really making this a useful interface for students, potentially bringing in some of the AI capabilities that might help direct their attention or give them insights about what they can be doing. Next is our publications epic. You'll notice this is currently assigned to someone HN, that is Hanara, who is our current UX intern. So obviously by the time we get around to 2027, I don't think Hanara is going to be working on this anymore. Her internship is going to end in the summer, but she is currently doing a lot of work, and then I think Jess can pick up whatever finalization Hanara doesn't get to. But I mean, this is something that's come up also in triage, just the fact, all of the different problems that we have related to the fact that the publications process is very arcane. People very understandably don't understand the relationship between, what changes they're making in the authoring interface and how that impacts, the instructors and then ultimately the students, or folks ending up in a situation. I mean, I know one of the big ones that we've discussed is if it ends up that changes don't get pushed through the course sections and you have a big course like Real Chem or one of our other big courses, you end up having to manually make changes to many, many sections. And that's a huge problem. But really, generally, Hunter's research has indicated so far that first of all, the publications process is even more arcane than I had thought. I think, and I don't think that's like any one person's fault. I think it's the kind of thing where it's gotten added to little by little as different needs and capabilities have come along. And there's never been a rationalization of all this entire process and how do we make this something that that is actually, rational and usable and understandable. So it's an effort to go back and rationalize that so that it's a much simpler process that people really understand and can have confidence in how they accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. So those are our two major epics. We then have two minor epics here. One is internal survey capabilities. This is the capability of us to actually, probably through Flash messages, deliver surveys or other similar content to users of, hey, can you click on this and then give us some feedback. This is really important in terms of us getting data on how different types of users are using the interface. So, and then how we can make it better. So I do think that that this is an important one in terms of us, getting the data to make, even future epics better. I think that's all I have to say about that. And finally, I know this is a really big ticket item. It is a course text search. It's the ability for students to look for course, information in a course and actually just run a search and find out every place where that content is in the course. I am pausing in case people have questions, but again, you can interrupt if you have anything along the way. So now we're getting into version 38, our third quarter of 2027. We have an intelligent project creation wizard. This is for our authors. And it really is looking at how are folks creating projects, both looking at, novice users. I mean, one of our values in Torus is we want to make authors out of instructors or out of folks who maybe don't have a history of creating courses and have them be confident that they're making a useful course. So a big part of this is how can we make a wizard that's going to kind of walk them through the process and make this more usable. But hopefully this will also be a feature that's useful for more seasoned authors to maybe point out places where some more attention could be used and that they can actually even improve on their projects, even given their considerable knowledge and expertise. So I actually think this is probably going to have some functionality in common with our earlier instructor course customization. If we're getting some capabilities for just intelligent content creation, and for instance, if you've made some questions for a particular learning objective, can you use AI to generate more questions or to generate more content? I think that's something that probably, is in common between these two features, though, of course, this earlier one is instructor facing and this later one is author facing. And then I have course catalog. This is a huge one that we keep getting asked about, and I know it's something that we need to get to. Just really having a reliable way that that students can understand what courses are available to them, having capabilities to differentiate between a product and a project that we might want to make available. So I think that we end up with situations where maybe there's a specific product but not others, or vice versa, not projects. Just giving finer grained control over what is publicly available, and just having a kind of a rationalized experience and unified experience for our students about how they can access and enroll in courses. I did leave the possibility as kind of a secondary goal of maybe some of the things we're building for this can also be helpful for instructors who are creating courses. I know there are areas where that can be confusing as well, though the primary goal here is student facing. Then Laura has one assigned here that is a bug hunt. I just think it's probably good periodically for us to be kind of looking at what our bug backlog is and what are the most important bugs and how do we just have a big effort to clear some of them. So we put that in there. And then as a minor epic, we have what we're calling space for instructor info. This is one that we get a lot of questions about, where right now, if authors are leaving content specifically for instructors, it really can only be in a page, and you would make a group that has visibility only for instructors. I think that can be kind of confusing. It also doesn't necessarily leave a great way for kind of more general information for an author to convey to an instructor. So this is really just a smaller feature of, can we just have a place where authors can put information that is more generalized information for instructors to consume, and a more usable experience for them. And finally, we have the version 39, which is the last quarter of 2027. We have make course creation easier. This is an instructor-facing epic. I do think it will probably, have something in common with our wizard that we just had previously done in version 38 for authors. This is the idea here is, can we make improvements to our existing wizard that instructors use so that they have a better idea of, what are the features available to them? How can they successfully, even if they're not familiar with Torus, kind of go through and be guided on how to create a course that has the setup that they want and that works the way that they want. This will hopefully lower the barrier, especially for new instructors. And I would say a companion epic to that is our next one, which is instructor onboarding. So whereas the making course creation easier is specifically that wizard that is helping instructors to create a course, instructor onboarding is just looking at this whole process of, so you start off with someone who's potentially going to be an instructor in Torus. How do they get an account? How do they get the permissions they want? How do they, I know this is something that Hal has spoken to, is just like the pain and, many steps involved, both for the instructor, but also if there's an admin or support person who's helping them with that. How do we make this better? Like, what notification emails do they want? How do we explain what their next steps should be and where they are in the process? So hopefully between these two epics, this is really going to make move the needle a lot for newer or more novice instructors who are starting to use Torus and helping them to understand what are the capabilities of Torus that they're looking at. In the authoring interface, we have a major epic here for activity bank improvements. So this is really just looking at, I think the activity bank is another one where we've had like different capabilities that have been added over time. And, there's a lot of powerful features there, but it's not always the most usable experience for authors. So this is really looking at, how does everything work in the activity bank? How do we make this something that folks can create activities, sort through them, find, edit, and then select them onto a page in the most usable way? And finally, we have a minor epic that's assigned to Laura. And this one, I'm calling it display names and tagging of resources. This is something that we've talked about a lot, where I think the classic example of this is Kim Larson having AI versions of pages and non-AI versions of pages. And because the only way she can name the page is the display name, and she doesn't want to give a page a display name that students are going to see that says like AI version or whatever, it ends up being super confusing. And I think that we also end up with other types of resources, whether they be projects, whether they be course sections, or any number of types of resources, where we have this issue where we want to have a sense of like, what is the display name of something that is actually going to show in the delivery once this is in a course section, versus can we have a quote unquote real name or some sort of tagging scheme so that it's easier to identify and sort through and search for the specific resource that you want. And this is one that we kind of tried to talk through multiple times, and people have a lot of different, sometimes even conflicting ideas of how this can get implemented. So I think it really warrants having its own epic with its own investigation that goes to figure out like what is the best way to accomplish this. One thing I do want to point out is not on this roadmap anywhere, but I'm hoping can be added at some point, is we don't have anything here about accessibility. The reason for that is that we have lost an accessibility resource in Heather, who I actually think today, well, maybe not today, maybe yesterday was her last day because she doesn't work for us on Tuesday. Oh, Friday. This is her last week working for us. Oh, last Friday. She's gone. Okay. So we have lost Heather. And it is really challenging. I mean, accessibility is something that takes a fair amount of effort to do the auditing, and doing the designs and kind of paying attention to the regulations. It's not something that I think, it is easy to kind of slip in as extra work. So I am hoping that we at some point are figuring out what is the plan for accessibility, possibly associated with the RISE project. I'm not sure, but hopefully that would be something that we can add on once we have some additional resources and we have a better idea of how we can move forward with accessibility. So that is my explanation of the roadmap that we made. So I would ask folks, where am I now? Sorry, here we are. Does anyone have questions, comments, feedback? What do folks want to talk about with relation to this roadmap? Hal.
I actually think that this looks really good. Thank you so much. That's like this obviously represents a lot of careful thought, and I appreciate it. The feedback that I have, can you open up the last thing that you were sharing?
Yeah.
As I was listening to all of these, what I was trying to think through was how they might impact scaling.
Mm-hmm.
And the three I think that are farthest out and most important to scaling would be in 38 and 39. The 38 would be the course catalog,
Mm-hmm.
and 39 would be make course creation easier and instructor onboarding.
Okay.
And I think that I have not been careful enough to give a clear understanding of what I mean when I talk about the course catalog, because you described it as being for the students when what I had intended was for it to be for instructors.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't have the Torus analog for like we had of the legacy self service system.
Mm-hmm.
That in legacy it was possible to request an instructor account, and once you have it, you could run and do everything on your own without needing to ever have somebody at OLI hold your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And currently today, even with an account already made for you, that's impossible. And so if we want to think about scaling as maybe the number one most critical factor, and that may not be it. I think we should talk about that as a group. What should we be thinking about the most?
Mm-hmm.
The inability for anybody to do this without serious actual hand holding, like deep intervention on our part is today impossible.
Yeah.
Both technically and socially. Like there's just not an understanding of how the system works from the outside. And so those three intersect in an important way that I think we need to talk more about.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, thank you, Hal. So I have a couple of things. First of all, if in terms of making some adjustments to like what it says in the course catalog epic, if you think I'm not capturing what you think is the important capability, that's something I think that that we can do before I leave. You and I can just chat and I can make some adjustments to what it says in the description and the KPIs and that sort of thing.
Cool.
As far as the potential for moving things up, and I think that you actually referenced this, but that I think is going to need to be more of a discussion, not only around like where is it in the priority, But again, how do we, do some of this work in a way that is scalable with current product team resources? And I also think, one thing, even aside from the issue of me leaving and responsibility for the roadmap being a little bit up in the air right now, we also have so much happening with the dev team. I mean, something that I would love to happen with the dev team is with all of these adjustments they're doing with with the AI work, maybe that's going to speed things up, and maybe all of these like that is a little bit pie in the sky, I admit it, but like
Yeah.
maybe all of these discussions we're having about like they're super painful about, do we do this or do we do that, like how do we kill our darlings, will become a little bit more moot. We just don't know. So
Yeah.
I do think, that's something that one of the reasons I'm capturing this meeting, and I'm going to try to capture some notes as well, so that whoever is the person picking up the roadmap responsibility after me, that can maybe be something that they address in future roadmap meetings.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Cool. Anyone else have feedback? And I'm gonna stop sharing my screen again, just because I have a really hard time figuring out if people are like raising their hands or doing something in the chat when I'm sharing. What's that?
The chat is clear.
The chat is clear so far. Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay. If no one else has any thoughts, I think that we are done with the meeting, unless anyone has any other agenda items or things that they would like to talk about while we're all in this meeting.
Thank you for all your work with this, Amanda. This is
Yeah.
really thoughtfully put together and like really well done. Thank you.
Thank you. I
Totally
also
agree.
would like to shout out Laura and Jess, who were both instrumental. Like we had, what did we have? 3 meetings, 4 meetings? We had a lot of meetings. One of which we did have outside last week, and that was tough. But yeah, I do think a lot of work has gone into this, so I appreciate it. All right, folks. Well, it's been great doing the roadmap meeting thing, and I mean, I'm still here for another week and a half, so I won't quite say goodbye. But goodbye, roadmap meeting. I will miss you.
Thank you, Amanda.
And have a good rest of your day.